Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Paul Sanderson from REB Market Intelligence. Simon has kindly asked me to host the webinar today. The webinar title is Embracing Technology to Increase the Efficiency of Your Recycling Business. Just a little bit of housekeeping. This should last about an hour, maybe a little longer. If you would like to ask a question at any point, please just send me a private message or a general message on the chat function at the bottom of the screen. And I will then take any questions at the end and ask you to ask your question at that point. So we've got a couple of presentations today. It makes sense if we get on as quickly as possible. So I'd like to introduce Connor Dowd. Connor is the marketing manager for recycling at AMCS. He's a former recycling practitioner with a keen interest in automation. So Connor, let's get on with your presentation.
Thank you very much, Paul, for the introduction. Today, I'm going to start with our experience of the common automation state of many recycling MRFs, as well as the automation challenges they face. I'll also share with you our vision of the connected MRF, i.e. how we automate all the end-to-end processes and workflows that you would typically have in a recycling MRF. And finally, I'll tell you a little bit about our company and the customers that we serve. So to start, these are the most common automation challenges that we see. This is what we observe when we visit MRFs, the conversations and the feedback we have from our customers. Typically, recycling MRFs have low levels of IT automation. They typically have a software solution for their weighbridge. They may have Excel word sheets. They may have financial systems, etc. However, one of the common observations we have is the workflows and the processes as the material moves across the MRF tends to be disconnected. This disconnection means often inefficiency, and it leads to a loss of value. Nowhere is this probably more apparent in the area of quality management, which we believe needs to be embedded in the processes of a recycling MRF, and it needs to be digitalized to protect your quality, to make sure that you are protecting your margins, producing the best quality recyclate, and having the most sustainable outlets. Another burden is the burden of administration compliance, and this burden has grown in recent years as you deal with many regulators. It's the burden for customs, for example, and for shipping and exports grows. The whole area of visibility into your financials, your costs, particularly around stock management, represents a significant challenge too. Many companies have not digitized this area, and they're often managing their stock on paper, or they're doing that using a lagging indicator. Whereas with digitization, you can have visibility on your stock in near real time, so you can plan your business accordingly. And finally, one of the complex challenges we see too in recycling MRFs is you have to manage and automate relationships and exchange data and documentation with multiple parties. Everything from buyers, suppliers, customers, brokers, HMRC, etc. There's a big requirement to digitize this area so you can be as efficient as possible in your administration. So let's look at the most common interconnected flows across your recycling MRF. And this is our vision of a connected MRF, where you automate, digitize, and integrate all your processes as the material is collected right through to the transformation when it's ready for shipping and sale at the end of the process. Our view is companies can link this and start the process by demand planning. And demand planning is, simply put, it's planning your material supply, planning your intake of material and your transformation, so you have the optimum amount of stock to sell to fulfill your sales contracts. And what we've built is a simple but powerful planning tool to integrate all aspects of collecting the material, knowing what material you have, what you need to transform, when you have to have it ready, and managing all the POs and supplier and buyer relationships about this. This allows you basically to plan your production and make sure you have the optimum amount of stock, and you're not tying up cash in overstocking, nor are you short of stock. This is integrated to the other processes, and these other processes clearly support the demand planning. So many of recycling MRFs are also in the business of collecting feedstock material. They may do this with their own fleet, or they may use third-party collection fleets. So we provide a transport planning solution which uses built-in maps, etc. And it's designed to develop efficient schedules and efficient collection of material. It also includes a driver mobile app, so the driver can collect the details, collect proof of signature, record any exceptions. Typically, the kind of benefits through automating your planning involve delivering savings of up to 15% on your transport costs. The next workflow that we look to automate is to drive faster throughput and processing at the weighbridge. And one of the innovations we've delivered is an automated unattended weighbridge. We provide a DAT, or a driver assisted terminal, so when the driver comes to the weighbridge, either coming in or coming out, they can identify themselves using a fob. The transaction that's scheduled is ready for them, and they can record the transaction, and the weight is taken automatically from the weighbridge. So this saves time, it increases throughput, and also it has the benefit of you can extend your operations 24/7. The next step in the process flow is the area of quality inspection. And we believe that having an embedded and digitalized quality process is absolutely key in this circular economy where quality is at a premium. So what we've delivered is a simple tool, an application for the banksman to use, so that each load after it's been brought in over your weighbridge can be inspected. It can be broken down, it can be sampled, you can do moisture readings, you can deduct containers like pallets or buns, etc. But most importantly, this quality process is linked into your weighbridge and financial systems. So you can, if you have some reclassification issues, you can capture photographs. Those photographs can be automatically, if you wish, notified and shared with the customer, so you can have a feedback loop. And in addition to, it links into the financial records of the system, matching the invoice. So if you wish, you can adjust the prices accordingly for any contaminations or reclassifications, etc. Pricing is an important area. And again, we look to automate and configure all the pricing, particularly that's recycling specific. So we have an advanced automated pricing engine. It allows you to set price for your company, by depot or outlet, by customer, right down to customer level. So it's multi-hierarchical, it's higher automated, and it's configured for a recycling company. So you many use cases, but for example, you can incentivize some suppliers by having banded prices to encourage them to deliver more tonnages in an invoicing period. You can clearly penalize them for lower quality material, and you can offer automated quasi-open book pricing where you link prices to retail indices like Let's Recycle. So the main focus here is to save the administration effort on pricing at the end of month by automating it in real time and configuring it to reflect how you wish your business to operate. The next crucial area is the area of stock and our inventory management. Again, this is an area where we have found very few companies, recycling MRFs, have digitalized their business. So with our technology, it's possible to have a real-time picture of the stock and have a picture of the stock as it moves across the business from raw materials to transformed goods to finished goods. And what we also can do there too is we can accrue your internal costs associated with transforming the stock. So that could be baling costs, it could be wire costs, it could be handling and processing costs, etc. But you have a full picture of your stock, not just in your depot, but enterprise-wide, and you can also separate third-party owned stock that would be owned by customers. Finally, we have, if we look into the material sales area, we have an ability where you can set up a sales agreement to a customer that you're supplying to. And again, the system has a planning system to allow you to set up slots for each container or each outgoing load. So you can plan against the calendar, and you can do this very efficiently, and you can link up and connect both your stock manager and your sales staff with the buyers. And then the final step I want to look at is the area of outbound logistics. And this links in very much into the theme of our seminar today, and particularly how this can complement the Traqa system, whereby, again, we can weigh a truck in, a container in, we can take all the photos, the packing list for the loading of the material. So we can verify the load content, add any pictures and documents, add the VGM, the data that would be available to us on the Annex 7, so that when the truck weighs out, all that information is available electronically, and potentially it could be sent to the Traqa platform for sharing and collaboration with third parties. So finally, a little bit about the AMCS company. We are a global leader in recycling worldwide, founded in 2003. We have operations in over 23 countries, nearly 3,000 customers. In the UK, we have a significant footprint. We've over 200 customers and 100 employees. These businesses, they range from large multinationals like Veolia and Suez, but they also range to small independent paper processors and merchants and brokers. So our cloud solution can basically automate a global multinational system right down to a small family or independent company. So I'm quite happy to take questions at the end of the session, or please at any stage reach out and contact me directly. Thank you, Paul. I'll hand back to you now.
Thank you, Connor. I'd now like to hand over to Simon Erling, who's going to introduce the Traqa presentation, and the rest of the team who are going to be giving that.
Yeah, morning, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Connor. One of the reasons why we wanted Connor to speak at the seminar or the webinar this morning was to sort of demonstrate we've got the material on the site with all the stock controls, etc. What happens then when the material leaves the weighbridge and when it enters the export process, which is why we developed Traqa, and which we will now cover 20 minutes or so, telling you how it all works. So, what is Traqa? I'm really excited about Traqa. I must admit, something we've been developing for a long time, and it's an industry solution for an industry problem, led by ourselves, a recycling association, and it's a collaborative platform to automate the transfer of information between all parties in the recycling supply chain, tracking loads for export from compliant origin to compliant end destination. And its objective is to demonstrate compliance throughout this system through collaboration of many parties involved in the process. So, if you were an outsider looking in at how our exporting system works for our industry, you would probably shake your head in disbelief, because in 2021, ostensibly, the system still relies on a physical piece of paper, an Annex 7, which sits in the back of a shipping container and is carried around physically by drivers, shippers, etc. And this document, along with other documents and photos, etc., are then emailed around in a very ad hoc an imprecise system. And like I said, you know, it's 2021 and it's crazy that that's a system that works. You know, there's no wonder our industry is a breeding ground for criminals and illegal activity. It's just so easy to go undetected. And it's something I talk about a lot as CEO of the Recycling Association. I firmly believe my members, to all intents and purposes, in an imperfect system, that we're the legal operators. How do we get rid of the illegals? Well, hence the development of Traqa, developed for members to digitise this whole process, to provide evidence of compliance for recycling exporters and building up trust in the supply chain. As Dave will talk about shortly, how we reduce all these manual tasks at the moment, all the emailing and to-in and fro-in that takes so much time, to enable real-time regulatory reporting. And this is something, again, I talk about a lot. You know, we're the compliant operators. We have nothing to hide. We say to Mr. Regulator, Mrs. Regulator, here's our load of cardboard, here's our load of plastics, here's all the data relating to it. Inspect it to your heart's content, because we have absolutely nothing to hide, and concentrate your resources on the illegals. Traqa will remove all the physical paperwork. It will digitize the whole lot, a data-first approach, and it will enable digitization for the recycling industry to make us future-proof. That's very, very important. Digitization is coming, believe me, it's in the resources and the waste strategy. Traqa automates it and it digitizes it, and it makes you as a member foolproof. So Dave, over to you to go through some more benefits, please, and to tell us how it all works.
Thanks, Simon. So my name's David Roth. I'm from SIF Consulting, and I've been working on this project with the Recycling Association. My background is 20 years in freight forwarding, supply chain systems, tracking systems for big blue chip companies. And I've been involved with the recycling for pretty much throughout that whole period of time. And similar in the transport and logistics process, when you look at how it's done today, it's very paper driven still. That's really starting to change. Everybody's looking for a more digital way to move forward. And I think the recycling supply chain is a great example in how we've implemented Traqa around this to really create that sort of collaborative platform where you can build upon Traqa for your own purposes. So really the focus of Traqa is that pickup from the loading site, which obviously Connor's just talked about, getting it to that ready for export process. And what we're really interested in is that pickup process all the way through to the port. So this process that you can see on screen on the how it works slide is common to everybody who's exporting. So for regulatory and compliance reasons, we need to move goods to an end destination, and to perform that task, we have to submit things like customs, VGM, include the Annex 7 in the back of the container or the trailer. So really Traqa is a data platform, and it's there to enable you to automate your own processes by being data driven. So it's an enabler really. I'm just going to talk through how it works, which is a slide on screen. The exporter would typically provide their load plan. This whole process is currently driven pretty much by email and load photos, etc., returned by email. So with Traqa, we take the data in electronically using something called an API. It's essentially a way of machines talking to each other. So the exporter needs to do a short integration to integrate their load plans. That will hit the Traqa platform. Those load plans will then be distributed out to the loading sites who are named in those load plans, so that the load sites can integrate the loading plan into their software. So immediately the load site are receiving information in a consistent format that can go into their platforms to avoid any rekeying. Then if we can imagine the truck arrives empty on site, it's weighed in first. As it's loaded, a series of photographs are taken throughout that process. And then as it comes to complete its final weigh, once it's loaded, the weighbridge operator within their own software will confirm that load. Once that load is confirmed, it triggers a series of events. So we take the information from the load plan and we take the information from the weighbridge. We're then automatically producing the Annex 7. And so there's no more handwriting on Annex 7s. They're fully clean copy Annex 7s. We submit the VGM on behalf of the exporter automatically. The VGM is a weight called the verified gross mass, which legally you have to provide to the carrier or the port. And then on confirmation of that load at the weighbridge, we return a real-time notification back to the exporter with the container number, the seal number, the product weight, the VGM weight, and other information that's typically followed up by email. So as we mentioned, it's a data platform. You can build on top of these events. The whole thing is event driven. If something happens in the real world, it's mirrored in the Traqa platform. So if we just click through. So this is how the Traqa application looks. And what you'll see at the top is a timeline. So these are what we call waypoints. They're key milestones that need to take place in the supply chain to enable the movement of those goods out of the country into their end destination. So we mentioned we're really interested in that pickup from the load site, the MRF, as we discussed earlier. So we've got a planned loading. We know when the truck arrived at site empty. We know when it departed, and we can see the date times. We know when the VGM was accepted by the ports, and we know when the customs clearance was also accepted by customs. And then we'll track also up to the port loading and beyond to end destination. So we also produce documentation. The Annex 7, typically emailed over in advance. Traqa will produce a completed Annex 7 with all of the weight information filled in automatically, and that is available immediately by email to the shipper. And also the load site get a copy so they can print and put it in the back of the container. They no longer need to scan that back in and forward it on by email. We also accept the weighbridge ticket from the weighbridge software, or we produce a Traqa enabled ticket, which essentially provides the information direct from the weighbridge. And then further down, you can see the loading photos. So what we've done here, the weighbridge software, if it enables it, allows photos to be attached to the loading records. They will automatically be attached to Traqa. We also have a kind of a catch-all where they can just include an email address, and that will trigger a machine learning process which reads the container number from the back of the door and attaches it to this loading record. So that enables everybody to take part, dependent upon the, independent of the technology they're using. So we've really worked from the ground up to make sure everybody can take part. We've also introduced, and we're just going through the testing stage, the customs process, so we can submit the export customs declarations. So for rest of the world, obviously that's just go straight through. For trailers into Europe, the driver has to wait around either on or close to site to accept an EAD document. That EAD document is produced at the load site on completion of that load. So within a few minutes, they can leave the load site rather than hanging around for typically 40 minutes plus for the customs process to take place. So all of the data that you can see on screen is available from the Traqa platform. It's available via an API, so you can bring that data back into your own systems. And obviously that massively reduces any time taken to follow up for information or confirm that a load has taken place. So really just to recap on those benefits of automation, there's obviously quite a bit of shared benefit in terms of the reduction in the admin time. No paperwork needs to be sent ahead of time or followed up. No loads need to be chased to see if they've loaded for a VGM cutoff, for example. You get immediate notifications and everything arrives as it should do in the right place. For the load sites, the Annex 7 is completed on load completion. For the exporters, they will automatically receive a copy of that Annex 7, and the VGM is automated from the point of loading. Also, then we've got the searchable photos. Google for the load photos if you like on app.traqa.io. And because of the customs process and the automation, this improves the turnaround time at site, allowing vehicles to leave much quicker and potentially allowing more vehicles to load in a day. So yeah, I'm just going to hand over to Mike, who's just going to talk around how to get started. So Mike, over to you.
Thanks, David. Hi, everybody. I'm Mike Jackson. I'm a board member of the Recycling Association, have been for many years, and I've become the project manager of the Traqa system. mostly because I'm the youngest person on the board and only one that understands what's going on originally. But anyway, so I think the important thing to get across is that the Traqa system is done, it's ready. We've tested it in live circumstances and it's all working. I know we've presented in the past when we've talked about the development of Traqa, but it's all complete now. So the really important thing for us to do now is to integrate as many people as possible into the system so that we can get the system working across the industry. So if you're an exporter of any material, either into Europe or the rest of the world, obviously, hopefully David has shown that this will be a massive benefit to you. We would love to hear from you, request a demo from us, and we will take you through the live system. We'll show you data going through the system so you can see exactly how it works. From there, you will be given the opportunity to do a trial with the system in the pilot stage. So we would set up a simple integration with you and you can see your live data going through. The important thing at that point is that we show you the API documents and your IT guys get a look at how we can potentially integrate you through the API system, because that's where you'll get the most benefit from using Traqa. And then we do an exercise with you to identify where your key load sites are. So obviously, the most important thing here is to create the network and build it as quickly as possible. So we identify the key suppliers for you to kind of hit the ground running and get as much of your and as many of your loads going through the system as possible, as early as possible. And then from there we go live, and yeah, that's it really. So Dave, next slide. If you're a supplier, so you've got a weighbridge on your sites, then please get in contact with us, because there are massive benefits to you as well, as David has demonstrated. We would need to know who your weighbridge software provider is. So I'll probably send out an email after this presentation to everybody, but if you can send one yourself to us, letting us know who your weighbridge software provider is and that you're interested, we can start having those key conversations with the weighbridge provider to integrate. We've already started a couple of integrations, more than a couple of integrations. So if you happen to be using one of the software systems that has already been integrated, that's fantastic. Just let us know that you're interested and we will speak to them about getting you signed up. And obviously that will be a very quick and easy thing to do. And I think that's it really. I think just encouraging everybody to come and speak to us, get more information. If anything's not clear through this small presentation, then we can go into more detail. And just send any questions over to us. Over to you, Paul.
Great, thank you, Mike. Thank you, David, and thank you, Simon. I've not had anybody email me with any questions, or message me with any questions. Please do so if you've got any now. So I'll just ask a couple if that's okay. Simon, who is Traqa available for? Is it just Recycling Association members, or is it anybody?
It's designed ostensibly for Recycling Association members, Paul, but no, we will open it up, or it is open up for basically anybody involved in the recycling industry. So it could be paper, it could be plastics, it could be metals, it could be anything. So you can be the exporter, or as Mike has outlined, you can be the site. So it's available for anybody to use.
Great stuff. Thank you, Simon. Another question for David and for Mike, either of you or both of you can answer. In terms of the security of the data, how do people know that what they put into the system will be safe to view just by them and not by others?
So that's a really important question, because obviously we're not oversharing data here. We only capture what's needed for the supply chain and the purposes it's needed for. We've been quite strict on what information shared to which party. So although there's an API to access data, you can't access data that you're not privileged to access. and there's certain segregation rules in place as well to make sure that your information wouldn't be shared across the wrong load sites or peering over the fence to another exporter. That's all been built in from the very start. We use identifiers, and there's a number of technical security features in place to manage that really. We won't share also data that's shouldn't be shared. So we'd only share it for the regulatory and compliance purposes and also the performance of the supply chain.
Great. We've got Paul Barnes who would like to ask a question. Paul, would you like to ask that yourself, or would you like to ask it on your behalf?
I'm here, Paul. Thanks. Yeah, just a general. I guess your answer is going to be it depends on the user, but what sort of cost basis, both in terms of the initial setup, but also the ongoing, or is it an annual cost or a monthly per user license? Cloud-based seems to be going per user per month or per user per annum. How's it laid out?
Yeah, so we have put a basic cost structure on our website, so feel free to go and visit that. For the exporter, there's a small transactional fee to cover the VGM cost and the transactional cost, and a small subscription monthly fee. But beyond that, it's a case of come and talk to us and see what we can do. We've done it in a structured way, so that the more loads that are going through us, the less fee there is, but you can see that all on the website. And we're trying to avoid as many costs going through the load sites as possible. So we have got funding, and we're able to do the integrations ourselves without burdening anybody to pay or supplement any of the integrations that we're doing. So that's the really key benefit of early adopters jumping on this and letting us know which software development platform they want us to integrate with, because there won't be any cost to that. Hope that answers that question.
Great, thank you. Adrian Jackson, would you like to ask your question?
Have you got anybody who's actually trialed the system to say how the benefits could work, please? Somebody with a bit of experience of actually using the tracker.
Craig, maybe? Craig Curtis? You're muted, Craig.
Here we go. Yes, we've been doing some trials with one of the brokers that we sell containers, material in containers to with, and it's quite clearly, to me, I'm fairly hands. I'm often actually on the weighbridge myself, so I'm actually doing it myself, and I really find it the thought of how it's going to improve things with the Annex 7 comes through, and it's that I'm thinking. I think David said that that would still need to be put in the container, but I think that we're hoping it won't need to be put in the container once it is fully used, and that time saving of being able to do that is really, really useful. I mean, we'll allow more containers to be loaded during the day, in my opinion. It is several minutes that it saves, because the photos and all these things are all done and not waiting for the Annex 7 after the weighbridge ticket's been done and that sort of thing. So that side of things is really, really going to be a huge improvement, I do believe. And we didn't speak about the thought of the European loads and helping with the customs declarations, Simon. I thought that's another benefit going forward as well, isn't it? Where perhaps that's something for the near future. Yeah, no, absolutely, it is, Craig. Thanks, and I'll pass over to Dave just to go through, put a bit more meat on the bones on that. But yeah, Brexit is here. As you know, Recycling Association is largely funded by IWPP, our trading company, and we're 80% of our business now is into Europe. And albeit things have settled down quite a bit, the process, is very bureaucratic, much slower than it used to be, and there are costs in the system. And we are at the moment writing the application within Traqa
to facilitate the export declaration, so that, you know, that the hanging around at the moment where vehicles are, you know, waiting for permission to proceed, you know, we will speed up out of hours loading, where you got to have people in the office, you know, to and fro with emails, etc. Then, you know, we will speed this up massively. Do you want to just sort of put a bit more meat on that, Dave, please?
Yeah, of course. I think just quickly picking up on what Craig said, I think it's probably fair to say, Craig, from an admin perspective, you're not getting chased for the information. It's just provided for the ones that you put through Traqa. There's no follow-up, is there? It's you do the load, perform your task, and upload your photos to the email as you would, and you've not been followed up for information since on those Traqa loads. Is that a fair assessment?
Totally seamless, totally perfect. Yeah. I do believe, yes. Yeah, everything is.
Thank you.
And just one other thing is that the Annex 7 is totally legible, whereas I would imagine there's the system that we have at the moment of, I mean, I can't imagine how anybody can actually read an Annex 7 after it's, you know, really and truly. I mean, the handwritten Annex 7, I don't know whether other people have their Annex 7 comes out all filled out of their PC, any other printer or something, but ours is all handwritten, and depending on who's written, it's a pointless piece of paper, and this is a perfect example of a beautiful Annex 7, perfectly completed.
So just picking up on the 2 points that were mentioned there, the first being the Annex 7 is there's work underway in the EU Commission. Now, obviously, the Annex 7 comes from EU law. So there's a working group within the EU, which I sit in, which is called the Digital Transport and Logistics Forum. So as part of that group, law has been passed within the EU now, which allows and gives the trader the right to present data instead of documents to any EU member state. So through those discussions and that legislation that's been passed, there's a few caveats to, or a few tenets to adhere to do this. But essentially, they're looking at the Annex 7 as part of that document set that they're looking to remove. So we will have the right to present data as an Annex 7 to any EU member state, and that will be within 22 months' time. So Traqa will be an FT approved platform, which is one of the tenets, and we will obviously be rightly providing that information to facilitate the movement. So there is on the horizon the potential removal of this Annex 7. Legally, the framework's in place, and we won't then have to place that Annex 7 in the back of a truck to go to Europe. Okay, so that's the first point. The second point was around customs. So the one thing that Brexit's definitely showed us is that customs is a problem, especially where you've got goods moving quite quickly over the border, and you need to do customs formalities, which were never obviously required previously when we were a member state. So what's typically happening, for everybody's understanding, is the truck is not allowed to leave the load site generally until they have the accompanying document, which demonstrates that the customs process has taken place. There's another stage to that customs, which has just been delayed. Actually, it'll be January 22, which will emphasize some of the work that needs to be done by the haulier in addition, but they will be having to wait for a permission to progress to port message, which allows the haulier then to go to the port or report for inspection. So it's very, very important that this information is provided seamlessly to the haulier, because there are additional constraints coming up in January 22. So what we've done with Traqa is we've connected into the customs systems, and if an exporter wants us to submit their customs declaration, they can provide the additional data sets, not a massive amount of extra data on top of the load plan. We've kept it as tight as possible, and then we submit their customs declaration at the point of loading. So within 5 minutes, that EAD will print out to Craig, for example, who can hand it to the driver, and the driver then has the permission to proceed to port or report somewhere for inspection. What's happening today is the information comes back from the load site, the truck pulls up either on or near the site, it will go back to the exporter, they will need to do their invoice, their customs declaration via themselves or via a customs agent. That information then gets emailed back to Craig to hand over to the driver. So that can result in a delay of a truck leaving site for anything between 40 minutes and an hour and a half. And this is a simple data message into customs which is why we implemented it into Traqa. It also works for the rest of the world in your deep sea containers. So the customs process is exactly the same as it is for containers, as it is for Brexit, but there is a higher demand in terms of time at the load site for the trucks going into Europe because of the process for Ro-Ro. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you. Vicky Batterbury has a question. Vicky, if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask it.
I can find the mute button. I was just asking, how would you access our own individual platforms? How would it integrate?
Okay, so we've got an API, so it's basically a set of instructions, and if you were an exporter, there will be two integrations realistically. The first will be to provide your load plan into the Traqa platform, and the second would then obviously be for your benefit to bring all of that loaded information back into your own systems. So that API is available and any IT developer will look at it. It's super simple. We've just completed another integration. It doesn't take long to do. If you're a load site, we've already integrated with some of the Weighbridge software providers, and AMCS also involved in those discussions. So essentially they will do the integration and they will put a plugin in the Weighbridge software, which allows you to integrate automatically if you're a loading site. And that's similar for the other software providers from the Weighbridge, which is why Mike's suggested that there's funding available for those connections, because the Weighbridge network and the load sites are an important piece in completing this digitalization. So it's very low impact in terms of an IT project. Typically, you could integrate this in a couple of weeks maximum.
Thank you.
And Paul Barnes got another question.
Yeah, I think you sort of got answered in Simon and some of the comments, but it's some instances we're dealing with sending emails, and begin by emails to customers to feed to their import agent. Sometimes we're sending information to transport companies who are handling our export declarations. Sometimes we're sending information to export agents who are handling our export declarations. Yeah. Multiple, each export can have a multitude of different pathways, some relatively stress-free and some stressful when we're having to marry up the export and import docs. And on that, I'm really talking about destinations in the EU with the changes with Brexit. Just wondered how many scenarios Traqa covers, or is it limitless with enough work put in?
So obviously the information is all available for retrieval, and obviously we push that information as well back to the exporter, who have the responsibility, for example, for the customs declaration. So I'm guessing they've asked you to forward
I'm asking as the exporter.
Sorry, okay, so you're interacting with export agents as well, or your customs. So with Traqa, we've really kept it so that we're walking before we run. But ultimately, that information is available in the API, and there is an opportunity to allow you to share that information with your supply chain. So we've started off with just one route back, which would be to you, Paul, as the exporter. But there is scope for your forwarding or customs agent to receive that information, but you would have to approve that. It's not something that we've started off with, but it's there available to do. So we could forward your your customs would be performed as an export by Traqa. So you wouldn't have that interaction, for example, that would just be taking place. If you needed to provide the container and seal numbers to your freight forwarder, that is something that you could approve Traqa to share that information on your behalf to the freight forwarder and agree what information is you're happy to share to them.
But when you say share, is that by different methods? So I'll give you an example. A massive transport company, DFDS.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't expect them to be integrating Traqa into their all singing, all dancing, portal-driven system anytime soon. But they want information from us.
Yeah.
Live load and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so I mean the data's there and we've followed standards, right? So from a transport perspective, they'll be using the UNCFAT reference data models predominantly for the shipping process. So our data is already in that format. We just need to put it in the format they need or forward it by email, which obviously relieves the burden for yourself. So if they want to integrate with your permission, they can retrieve that information if they want to do that. If not, then obviously the information can be directed to them on your behalf, but it's something we'd probably just need to discuss a bit further.
Yeah, what we're finding is all the different transport companies and different export agents all have almost a unique way of wanting to handle it to fit in with their systems.
Of course, yeah.
I think that's a really important point as well, because that's something we saw a couple of years ago when we started the Traqa project, is a lot of the exporters were also looking at their own development of software and apps and things like that, that they were starting to impose on load sites. And that's the exact situation that we're trying to avoid by using Traqa, so that everybody can plug into this one place for the same bit of information that everybody is looking for. So we avoid that situation as much as possible. Obviously, with the things you're talking about with the hauliers, it may take them a little bit longer to integrate into the system. But if we can, as a community, start that process, then I think we'll be in a far better place in the future.
Yeah, and I think it's about trying to arrive at some sort of middle ground where it's not either, you know, you almost put the system to one side and generate an email, or you must have the whole integrated system set up. We've got to, you know, walk them through to be able to access it in a different way. You know, can they log in as a portal rather than getting their IT guys involved for a full integration? I don't know.
Yeah.
Thank you for those questions, Paul. Adrian Jackson also had a couple more questions.
Is the EA aware of Traqa, and if so, what do they think? I know we talked about the EA being on board with it. Are they, instead of a platform for all exporting, how much progress on that?
Yeah, good question, Adrian. Thanks for that. Yeah, absolutely. We've involved the Environment Agency right from the start on this, and we've had over the last year numerous Zoom meetings with them. We've demoed Traqa to them. They've got their own sort of waste tracking project on the go, which is sort of mainly internally UK. And they love it. They, you know, they've actually said they can't do this, but they said they would integrate it tomorrow if they could. But because of public procurement, etc., they can't. So, but what they have said is that they will, you know, allow us to integrate with their systems going forward. And for example, in the resources and waste strategy, which is due to be implemented from 2023 onwards, the digitisation of the Annex 7 will become a legal requirement, and the agency at the moment haven't decided what their database will be. It might be NPWD, you know, where we log the PRNs at the moment. But what they have said is it's an absolute no-brainer that they will allow us to integrate into whatever their system is, so that we can just drop our data into it. So again, you know, which will put out the manual processing. And one of the things, Adrian, that, you know, I'm involved in more and more on lots of groups that I'm on at the moment is this proving that we're compliant. And it's something I talk about a lot, and we haven't really touched on this. But the scope of Traqa going forward, once we've sort of got the digitisation started, we've got all this data in place, is actually proving that the material arrived at where it was supposed to go. Because there's still this perception that we take material halfway across the ocean, open the ship doors, and then dump all the plastics in the ocean. And believe it or not, you know, people do still believe that happens, and we haven't always helped ourselves on it. Using smart containers, which will allow us to use GPS technology, we can actually track the container on every step of its journey. So you can prove that you know, if the material left Potter's Bar on its way to Malaysia, that's exactly where it arrived, and you know where it went by, and so you're tracking compliant, good quality material that you've got nothing to hide from a compliant operator to a compliant end destination. And there is work going on in Europe at the moment that will require all end destinations, non-OECD and non-OECD, so non-European destinations, to be audited before you can export there. And on the basis that we have adopted EU law, you know, I would imagine we will be using this database going forward, and Traqa is part of the discussions at the moment with Europe. You know, we're at that level with them to use it. To once you've audited the end destination, you prove that it's got there. And you know, to the agency EA, and not just the EA, Adrian, but you know, CEPA, NRW, and NIEA as well, all of whom were spoken to. You know, that's really exciting for them. You know, it's data, and the whole idea is that we get a green flag. You know, share your data. You've got nothing to hide. Share your data with the agency if they don't make it compulsory, and it's a green flag. It's the ones that operate on the periphery, the illegals that don't share the data, then that will free the agency up to concentrate on them. So a long answer to a simple question, Adrian. Absolutely right the way along the board. The regulator is on board with this, and we're speaking to them, and they're as excited about it as we are.
Thanks, Simon, and thanks, Adrian, for your question. Connor, I've just got a question for you. How easy is it to integrate Traqa into Weybridges?
Sorry, in terms of our own software,
Yes.
Certainly there are published APIs, so I would see it very much as being a kind of a low friction, low resource integration in terms of exporting to Traqa what we already have in the system. We already have the VGM, we already have the Weybridge record, we already have some of the data sets for the Annex 7, etc. So it's relatively straightforward integration to pass and transfer that information into Traqa.
So, anybody else got any questions?
Paul, sorry to interrupt. I saw there was a question earlier about GDPR.
Yeah, the person who was going to ask that actually didn't seem to be on the call anymore, but they were just basically asking how does Traqa work in terms of GDPR?
We've obviously got a GDPR policy like everybody, because we do have to process some personally identifiable information for those loads, but the information is secure and it's only used where it would be today in the supply chain. So it's fairly straightforward. It has to be filled in, for example, on the Annex 7. So that's the only reasons we would be using it, but we don't show it unnecessarily. And obviously we've got various security safeguards in place, which we mentioned.
We've got another question from Phoebe Angam. Phoebe, would you like to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Hi, sorry, I'm just on hands-free at the moment. I was just wondering when it's likely to become compulsory for loading sites and for exporters. You mentioned you said 2023, and obviously at the moment it's only for members for recycling associations. Is it going to be ruled out sooner rather than later so everyone is more aware of it?
Did everybody get that? Essentially, the question is, when will this software become compulsory for loading sites and exporters? Simon, David, would you like to answer?
I think it's not compulsory. There's stuff going on in the EA which is about making waste digital, essentially a bit like they did with tax and reporting. And that's something that's obviously quite a burden for a lot of load sites today in terms of reporting. It's done monthly and it takes a couple of days. And obviously what we're talking about here with what we've seen from Connor and also from Traqa is moving to really real-time reporting. So there's compulsory stuff going on within the EA. And from a Traqa perspective, if there's any compliance or regulatory requirements that need to be done or we can facilitate, then that is exactly why we've started building this data platform, so that if we need to provide Annex 7 data electronically, rather than everybody on the call, for example, building integrations into Making Waste Digital, we can switch it on in Traqa and provide that information on your behalf. So really it's about facilitating that compliance. So there are things obviously afoot with the EA and obviously within Europe. But Traqa won't be compulsory. We'd obviously very much like you to use it. So Simon, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that.
No, I think you're absolutely right on it, David. It's making us future-proof, really, Phoebe. And will Traqa be compulsory? Well, no, because we're not the regulator, but we are facilitating this digitalisation process. Like I said, Annex 7's our digitalisation of Annex 7 is coming from sort of 2023 onwards. Other things that it will satisfy, which we haven't touched on, in terms of compulsory requirements, which they're tightening up. The PRN, for example, the PERN, which is a very murky area, where Traqa, can prove that, the compliant material left a particular destination and ended up in a compliant destination. And I know Dave's working at the moment on a group in Europe about digital signatures on Annex 7s. But anybody who's been audited recently for PERNs will, and you'll have seen on your conditions of accreditation for this year, that you have to have the Annex 7 now signed by the end destination. But it has to come back to prove that it's actually arrived there. And again, this is another example of what will be a compulsory requirement that Traqa will be able to do automatically for you.
Is there anything from the Weybridge software provider's perspective on that about compulsory? Because I'm sure there's obviously Weybridges have to have the certificates and all the other stuff. So I'd imagine you need some sort of software to manage that piece.
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. And what you sort of have touched on before as well, that I know as part of it, is that we match Traqa up to the European container list, etc., so that we can marry that up. It would have, once mills are audited, it will have that data on there. So it's not a compulsory tool in itself, but it will be able to satisfy, as I said right in my introduction, it'll be able to satisfy compulsory requirements, which are going to increase and increase going down the line. Anything that's digital, we can just do it in real time for you.
So we're coming towards the end of our hour. I'd just like to ask Connor, Mike, Dave and Simon if they've got any final points they'd like to make.
No, nothing on Bob. Sorry, one other thing, Paul, I forgot on this compulsory thing as well, in terms of box ticking, is that we Traqa is matched up to the waste carriers list as well, so that if a vehicle arrives on site that isn't registered as a waste carrier, then you've got the ability to turn that vehicle away. So again, another compliance box ticked.
Yes, so, the only thing, the only thing from me is just to repeat contact details. So you can check out the website, which is traqa.io, very simple, or you can email me at info@traqa.io and we'll send out those details again, but please get in contact.
And likewise, we will share the slide deck there with my contact details. Please feel free to reach out to me at any stage for more information.
Thank you. The slides from the presentation are going to be made from both presentations, going to be made available, as is the recording of this meeting. So if you want to contact Donna at the Recycling Association, who will be able to provide those at some point shortly after this event is finished. So finally, I'd just like to thank Connor, Mike, David and Simon for their presentations today, and also the 51 participants and those who've asked the questions. So thank you everyone for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.